Hi, I'm Hyla.
Hi, I'm Hindi. Welcome to Your Relation Shift. Join in our conversation where we explore
The nuance and beauty of Torah's perspective on relationships.
let's discuss a little bit of Shavuos and see if there's something that we can feel connected to in the Yom Tov of Shavuos. I know that I do try to prepare some sort of intention before a Yom Tov because oftentimes on the Yom Tov itself, things are very rushed. There's meals, there's other people to take care of, and I don't necessarily always have that moment to just feel the energy of the day. So setting an intention before or being a little bit more proactive, just like slightly even, helps me at least enjoy the day instead of feeling like I pass through it passively. Instead, I feel like I'm actively involved in the energy of the day, even if I'm not, you know, doing all the things that I would love to do, but at least I'm aware to it. I'm open to receiving the energy of the day. So, what are some of the themes of Shavuos? So, the first theme that comes to mind is the theme of Torah, right? We receive the Torah. It's a celebration of Torah, of Hashem giving that to us as a gift. Everyone makes sure to go to listen to the Aseret Dibrais. It's a huge theme throughout Shavuos. We stay up for the first night to learn Torah throughout the night. Um, Men, it's incumbent on them to do so. Women are invited to do so. It's our Torah too. So Torah is definitely a theme of Shavuos. Another theme that I'd like to light upon is the name Chag HaKatzir. Shavuos actually has 5 names, but this name is interesting. It's the time of harvesting. Now, harvesting is not necessarily something we feel very relatable to because we're not farmers. Um, but what is the concept of harvest? What you've planted, what you've reaped, what you've worked the land to bring forth from the land. Now you have the ability to harvest. And this is literally the time of the year that we do so. And there's obviously deeper significance behind harvesting. And the last theme I want to bring is the story of Rus. Now, Chabad people Lubavitchers do not read Rus on Shavuos, but it still is a major theme of the Yom Tif. Everybody else does read Rus, and I actually attended a class in my shul all about Rus, and it was so beautiful to hear how her story is so inextricably intertwined with the whole concept of Shavuos and what Shavuos is supposed to represent. So let's try to see if there's a way to combine these 3 themes that we're seeing in Shavuos. And for sure, there's many more themes, but these are the 3 that I want to talk about and see if there's a way to see an underlying thread between all of them. And then also see if there's a possibility for us to have a practical takeaway, something that could be alive for us on Shavuos itself, and maybe even something that we can implement emerging from Shavuos into the rest of the year, towards the summer and the rest of our lives. So in typical Chassidic fashion, we're going to put this aside and we're going to explain another concept. So another concept that comes up on Shavuos is the number 3, which is it's a funny thing. I actually never learned about this until this year, but 3 is a prevalent theme with Shavuos. Why? The Torah was given in the 3rd month. It was given to a nation of 3s, Kohanim, Leviim, Yisrael. It represents the love triangle between Hashem, Bnei Yisrael, and Torah. So there's a lot of 3s happening here. So Chassidus takes this concept of 3 and actually talks about it outside of the context of Shavuos and talks about 3 as a representation of shalom and the purpose of creation. How is that? What is 3? Let's start with 1. 1 is by itself. There's nothing to argue with it. There's nothing to contend with it. It's just itself. It's on its own. It's independent. And there's no struggle. Introduce 2, now there's struggle. Now there's distinction. Now there's difference. And so 2 represents adversity. 1 is independence. It's alone. There's nothing struggling with it. 2 is adversity. And 3 is now there's the ability for there to be harmony. There's ability for 1 and 2 to become something more. Here in relationships, we talk a lot about the third way. And this is going to be a theme that we're going to see throughout Shavuos. So what is an example of the third way when it comes to purpose of creation, right? Why does Chassidus talk about 3 as not just the theme of Shavuos or not just something that is important to live with, but also has to do with the purpose of creation? So let's look at the ultimate one, the first one. So of course Hashem is the ultimate one and the only one, but the one that came after him, right, was Adam Harishon. Hashem created one man, him himself. And man was, right, created man, humankind was Adam. And then Hashem decided, let me give him a counterpart. Let me give him some adversity. Let me give him someone who's going to stand opposite him. And he gave him Chava. Now there was 2, which meant Adam was his way and Chava was her way. And now there's going to be a little bit of struggle. There might be conflict. There's going to be something else. And then Hashem said, I want you both to be married. And what that means is, I want you both to be connected. I want you to be able to merge so that something new can be born from that merging, from that synthesis, from that unity. And that is a representation of the entire purpose of creation. Hashem said, I am one. I am the ultimate one. Everything is one within me. From my perspective, there's no adversity. There is nothing else. There's no other. But he created a world, and that world makes this perspective now of other. Now there's 2. There's Hashem and there's a world. From Hashem's perspective, that's not true. But from our perspective, we now see otherness. Now there's a breach between heaven and earth. Now there's a breach, right, on a cosmic level, but also in an internal level. There's a breach even that we feel in the constant battle of being human. I feel a breach between my human and holy. I feel a breach between my nefesh elokis and my nefesh bahamis, my godly soul and my animal soul. There feels like there's distinction. There's 2 voices. It's such a struggle. And Hashem says, what I want is I want a marriage. I want a unity. I want a synthesis. I want these opposite things to work together. And when they're able to each put a little bit of themselves aside and make space for the other, then there will be unity. And then from there, something will be born. So you can see, even in the beginning of creation, Hashem was clear in what he wanted creation to look like. It was supposed to be this concept of the third way, 2 opposite things coming together to create something new. Let's go back to the themes of Shavuos and see how those themes of Shavuos are actually directly linked with this concept of third way. Let's look at Torah. Torah is exactly the third way. On a superficial level, it's not, right? When you look at the Torah, you think things are very black and white. Halacha has so many arguments. It's either his opinion or it's his opinion, and never the 2 shall meet. According to like a superficial reading of the Torah, everything feels very much like it's, black and white, as opposed to the side of Torah, right? Chassidus brings out a totally different dimension of Torah, where suddenly there's like the Rebbe or Chassidus will explain some sort of idea in Torah and suddenly bring the 2 concepts together, so you never really saw them as separate or distinct. It kind of like brings Torah to a whole nother level where now something new can be born. There's also the idea that Torah represents this merging between Hashem and Bnei Yisrael. Before, we were just a nation. Here at Har Sinai, Hashem chose us. Suddenly now there's relationship. Suddenly now there's connection. Hashem is reaching out to us. He's trying to bring something to us. And we, in turn, respond to that. Now there's relationship. Now we are man and wife. And a third thing can be born from that. What is that relationship? Hashem gave it to us on Shavuos, the ability to connect with him. And his love language is Torah. That's how we can connect with him. By learning and engaging with Torah, there's a merging of the heaven and earth, of Hashem and Klal Yisrael. There's that ability for something new to be born from it. Technically, how is it possible to merge absolute Kedusha and absolute finitude, materialism? Hashem gave us that ability when he gave us the Torah. Right? So this also talks a lot about, like before the Torah, Avram Avinu kept the Torah, right? It says about the Aves that they used to wrap themselves with tefillin. It was like with like sticks or like leather straps. I don't remember which one. But afterwards, they just discarded it or they used it for a fire because there wasn't a merging of heaven and earth. We didn't actually make the physical tefillin holy. There wasn't a possibility for that. When Hashem brought himself to us and said, I want a relationship with you and I want to merge heaven and earth, that's what happened on Har Sinai. So Torah, one of the themes of Shavuos, very much has to do with the third way. Let's look at the next one, Chag HaKatzir. Chag HaKatzir in the Torah is referred to HaKatzira, which in English means it's harvest. Instead of saying Katzircha, it's saying Katzira. Katzircha would make more sense, right? Like I did a lot of work. I put the seed in the soil. I raked the ground. I worked the ground. And this is the fruit of my labors. And the Torah does not say that. And the reason for that is the Torah is trying to bring to us this concept of there's a third way. How? All you did was put in a tiny little seed. And what the ground gives back to you is a tree, a plant, a watermelon, right? What you put in is in no measure commensurate to what comes out of the earth. And the reason why the Torah says Katzira and not Katzircha is to let you know there's a bond here. There's a dynamic here. There's not just you in this picture. There's you, what you put in, and there's the land, or obviously on a greater level, Hashem. What Hashem is bringing to you, the bracha that Hashem is blessing you with, what he's bringing to your world is so much greater than what you're investing here. But there's still that relationship. And when you bring what you're bringing, Hashem is going to bring what he's bringing, and something else will be born from that. Something great will be born from that. Harvesting is not just my personal harvest. Harvesting is a recognition of there's a partnership here. And now we could see the fruit of our labors, not just mine. And the third theme of Shavuos that we mentioned was Rus. What does Rus have to do with the third way? Well, if you go into the story of Rus and how it all played out, this incredible woman who gave up a life of luxury. She could have married any Moavi man. She could have married any Jewish man. She was a young, beautiful woman. She could have married anyone. And instead she chooses Boaz, this old man, old individual who happens to be some sort of relative. Why? In order to perpetuate her mother-in-law Naomi's name. She wants to make sure that that name continues. It's important to her to honor her mother-in-law in that way. And in the same way, Boaz does the same thing. He didn't have to marry Rus. He fights for her. There was someone else who was actually a closer relative. It could have been an embarrassing experience for him marrying this Moavi woman who comes from questionable birth. There's even a whole question in the Gemara whether or not she was actually allowed to marry Boaz and if she's considered a real convert. He didn't have to do that. He didn't have to have a child with her to perpetuate somebody else's name. Both of them put themselves aside in order to give birth to this child. What's fascinating is the pasuk after says that that child became Naomi's child. Like literally says that it became her baby. She was the nurse. She nursed this baby. To explain this exact piece, that two people coming together, they came together from a space of humility. And when they both joined together from that space of humility, something else was born. And that sacrifice that they made was literally the paved path towards our ancestor, David HaMelech, to give birth to, God willing, Mashiach, right? Mashiach's ancestor is Rus. He was born from that relationship, which makes complete sense, right? The whole purpose of creation, the very beginning of creation started with the third way, that there's supposed to be a merging of two opposites. There's supposed to be a third thing that's supposed to happen here. Mashiach is born from that kind of relationship. It makes sense that a representation of that relationship would be the culmination of the purpose of creation. Now let's make it practical, right? This is a beautiful idea. It's a beautiful concept to keep in mind. The third way. How do I do that practically? First thing is in order for us to get to number 3, let's first start with number 1. I have to be able to see my own value. I have to be able to see myself. Who am I? Am I being honest with myself? Do I even know myself? What are my desires? What's happening in my own inner world? If I'm going to try approaching number 2, right, the second, the other, I first have to be myself, right? So just to give some examples, let's say for me, as a mother, when I was coming from a space of not being one or not knowing myself or feeling whole. So yes, I was there for the other, but it was coming from a broken place. And I'm sure my relationships suffered, right? So even if I was there for my children all the way and was basically a martyr, that's not good for my children. It's not a good message for my children. And even if I was fooling myself and thinking I was giving my all for my children, it wasn't my all, because my all would be me first being myself and filled up and then being able to give to my children. The same thing, by the way, with, let's say, my Judaism or my interaction with my Judaism. If I'm doing mitzvahs and performing Hashem's will from a place of, it just has to get done, I have to daven, I have to learn, I have to make sure to just like do Shavuos, then yes, I'm doing what he wants, but I have lost myself. It's not a great, incredible ability to listen to Hashem's will if I have no will of my own. That's not the two coming together and something else being born from there. I first have to have my own will. I have to be my own person. I have to be a person. I have to be human. And then when I have my own will to then direct it to do what Hashem wants, that's what Hashem desires. That's the purpose of creation. That's experiencing the third way, where there's a relationship now. So the very first step towards interacting with this concept of the third way is to first fully see me before I jump to the other. Because we're so good at jumping to the other and either servicing the other or pushing against the other. First, let me come back to me. Then, when I have space for myself, then I have space to also see the other person. Then I could witness my children or my husband or Hashem and see their value, his value, Hashem's value. And then there can be a meeting of the two, and something else can be born from that. But not before. So this Shavuos, when we're approaching Shavuos, a very important piece is to fully and entirely embody my real experience. And then it doesn't have to be perfect, right? We're talking about progress, not perfection, right? The ultimate perfection is only Hashem. But to even just to like reset yourself with, okay, this is my value, and now I'm going to move forward to be able to see his value. Even just like that reset will change the interaction between you and the other and allow a third thing to be born. So where can I see my value? Where can I see where I end, where I begin, how I feel, what I want? And after that, I could see the other and see their value, see his desires, his wants, see them as valuable, have space for them because I have enough space for myself. I've made space for myself. So there's space for another person. And then in all that beautiful space, in that relationship, in that unity and synthesis, from there can be born the purpose of creation. So I want to give you all a bracha to experience, feel, eat, like chew over the third way, and hopefully really truly feel like you're engaging in your relationship with Hashem, engaging with your relationship with Torah and our from lifestyle, and really feel like you're engaging with your relationship with your children and, of course, your husband. I want to thank you all and have a beautiful Shavuos, Kabbalah Satara B'Simcha B'Pnimius, and yeah, all the best.
We would love to hear your feedback, thoughts, and questions.
Please leave a comment below or email us at yourrelationshift@gmail.com.
Looking forward to connecting with you.
See you next time.